And hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Keep the Ghost Light On with me, Steve Stott, President of the Showman Players, and my co-host, Robin Frome. Say hello, Robin. There he is. And why is tonight's show special? Tonight's show special because we have the most guests we have ever had. I hope it's not going to be like herding cats, but we'll find out as we go along. Tonight, we are talking tech. We had an episode a number of weeks ago where we had a very successful discussion all about tech and the impact of COVID on tech and the impact of tech on COVID and performance and all that kind of stuff. Now, that went on beyond our normal time scale for the show, and we vowed to continue that at some point. So this is it. We wanted to focus on the tech side of the performing arts. We've done a lot of shows where we've talked to performers and directors and writers, and a lot of the what you might think of as the front end of the performing arts. We know we really want to find out a lot about what goes on backstage, behind the scenes, and with a lot of the tech that involved in the performing arts, and how the current situation is affecting that side of things. So I won't do too much of an intro tonight, but I do want to just call out that we are seeing COVID cases rise all across the US, and in fact in a number of countries around the world. They're seeing the numbers go up. I think everyone is more or less prepared for a long, gloomy winter of COVID, and that doesn't necessarily make a lot of difference to the way we feel about where the performing arts is going during all this. I think we're all fairly resigned now to the fact that we're not going to return to normal. Certainly not in the live performance space, until well into next year anyway. So I don't know that what's happening right now makes a lot of difference there. It's worth saying though that in the UK, some reasonably positive news. They are going into a lockdown this week for about a month in England. Already in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, they've had various flavors of lockdown, but in England they're definitely going into lockdown for 4 weeks. What I did read today is that the production of reality TV and ongoing serials is probably going to continue. When everything went into lockdown earlier in the year in the UK, all that production stopped. But it seems like that is going to keep going, probably because they have been able to mitigate some of the risks, and again they've moved on, and typically it's quite pertinent. It is the technology that's allowed them to do that. So that's a bit of good news. Other thing, if you are submitting if you're in Connecticut and you're submitting your application for a grant for the arts to help with difficulties during this period, tonight's the deadline. So watch us, but multitask and fill in that grant application and get it in before midnight tonight, and then hopefully you'll get a little bit of respite from your worries with that. So that's all I really have to say. I'm going to hand over to Robin Frome to introduce our guests. As I say, you should see them all on the screen. They're from a wide range of areas, from pure tech to stage management to artistic to music to everything you could imagine in between. But Robin will guide us through. We'll have a few minutes chat from each of them, and then we'll launch into our discussion on the state of tech and where it's going and what we can expect. Okay, so Robin, over to you.
Great to see everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with Kim Hansen. How are you, Kim?
Hey, good, Robin. How you doing?
Doing great. You look great.
I wouldn't go that far.
I think I met you about 30 years ago. Well, a little bit less, but it was doing some, you and your wife were handling the Nutcracker for all those years. And then through Robin Dreek and people like that. And it was great meeting you at first and now too. I appreciate you doing this. So give us a bit of your background and, go right into how the pandemic has affected you one way or another, and go right ahead.
Well, let's see. I got into theater, I guess, basically my senior year in high school because my girlfriend was in the choir and she was doing the musicals, so I volunteered to push some sets around backstage, and it was all downhill from there. So there you have it. I spent, a greater part of the 80s and the 90s touring bus and trucks, primarily as a master electrician / lighting designer, occasionally as a stage manager or a company manager. I do a fair amount of production, or at least until recently did a fair amount of production management work, largely for Stephen Siller, Untitled Towers Foundation. And I have 4 or 5 venues that I provide designs for regularly. Getting into what's happened since March, I mean, the last live show I did, except for a small 9/11 ceremony in town, was in early March in Key West. Since that time, I've lost 3 shows that I would have been doing there. Lost 3 large-scale events for Stephen Siller, Tunnel Towers. Lost 2 shows that I would have done for Gateway, Long Island, and multiple small local shows that I would have been involved with. So basically, I've been unemployed on the theatrical end of things since early March. I am a selectman in New Fairfield, so I continue to do that virtually in terms of meetings. I am hoping to do a show in Key West New Year's Eve, opening Rocky Horror, but that's a pretty scary show in terms of COVID. And so I'm a little up in the air on whether or not I'm going to be able to do that. Going to play it by ear. I mean, people are saying airplanes are really not so bad. These are people who frankly came through AIDS in the 80s, and so they do have an understanding about being safe and being cautious. So I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that I will be able to do that show, but I'm not sure. Beyond that, my wife, as you mentioned, is still teaching ballet, and in fact, we're purchasing that studio now from Sibley. We're in the process of doing so. She wanted to get out of the business, and frankly, in order to keep Liz employed, we decided we needed to buy it. That's a risky venture at this point in time, although Sibley is being very, very kind in terms of understanding the situation with COVID. Basically, a room that used to be able to teach 30 kids in, now you can only fit 12 in because of rules and regulations. So there's a lot of issues going on with that, but I will be doing some small amount of lighting for filming of scenes from Nutcracker that will get edited into a video presentation. Beyond that, I don't know what to tell you. You got any questions? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not optimistic about having much work until the middle of next year.
right. I hear you. So give us an idea of how the unions are dealing with this. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us about that?
Well, the only thing I can tell you, I mean, I've been a member of local stagehands too in Chicago since '78. I haven't done union work in a very, very long time. I continue to pay my dues. God bless them. You know, even though I'm out here in Connecticut, I've gotten 2 or 3 wellness calls from them just to check up and see how I'm doing. And they occasionally send me a mask with the union bug on it. But I think, you know, from what I've read in their bulletins, et cetera, they've been quite proactive in terms of trying to find ways to move forward in safe production ways, but there's really not much happening with that. I don't know what else to tell you about that.
Okay, that's fine. Steve, you have anything for Kim?
Yeah, the shows that you'd got lined up in Florida, and the one that's coming up, were they the ones that were cancelled? Were they cancelled sort of en masse, or were you kept on sort of tenterhooks, waiting to know what would happen with them?
I'm sorry. What are you saying?
So when those shows were cancelled,
Oh,
that
yes, yes,
you were
yes.
due to go. Were they cancelled in one go, or were they cancelled?
Yeah, they were pretty much canceled in one go. I mean, there was some hesitation. I think, when I left there in March, COVID was just starting. I was a little nervous to get on the plane. There was talks of hoping to do something in early fall, and then I think by late June, they pretty much canceled the season for the year. That's about the same time that Gateway Playhouse on Long Island canceled their shows for the year. They've been showing some movies in their parking lot. They've been doing, this is Gateway on Long Island, and they've been doing a few very small one-offs in a large theater that's available to them where they can seat people very far away.
Mm-hmm.
The folks in Key West have largely been doing radio plays with a local radio down there. I don't think they've done any podcasts. I don't think they've done any video work, but they've been doing weekly radio plays to keep their hands in and frankly to keep their people working a little bit.
Yes, yeah, no, we've heard a lot of that people are turning to these alternative types of performance because they're really not in a position. And I was interested in the comment you made about the Nutcracker and filming small scenes from that and making that happen. Are those being put together as a full performance, or are they really scenes?
They would be fully costumed, and they will be generally put together in the order that a Nutcracker would normally go in. You'd have your first act, the big family scene in the living room, going into the magic, going into the snow scene, and then the second act, Fantasyland, with all the Nutcracker suite items that you would normally see. Largely, what Liz is doing is reducing the amount of time that more than 2 or 3 people need to be seen together in any single shot in order to preserve, safety. They will be wearing masks, but they will be fully costumed. We would love to be able to do a huge blue screen, but we're not able to. So in terms of set, it's going to be very, very minimal. But in a lot of ways, she's discovering, that she kind of likes some of what she's doing. Instead of having 30 people that she has to deal with at certain points in Flowers, she can really limit it and bring it down to smaller groups. How she's going to edit that, we're not sure yet. There may actually be 1 or 2 different things going on screen at the same time sometimes. So that'll be an interesting process, and we're looking at various editing software to achieve certain effects. Snow, for example, at the end of the first act. So yeah, it remains to be seen, but it'll be an interesting project.
Well, that's right. So some of this is turning out to be interesting and exciting because it's challenging. It may not be ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but I suspect a number of people are being forced into learning a few more things than they did before in order to get through.
And it's a change of pace, and it also gives the kids, a chance to learn a role and to perform a role and to see that role performed. So in that regard, obviously it'd be great to be on a full stage and have all our drops and 150 lighting units and whatnot. But the value for, I think, the students is still quite high.
Absolutely. Anything that we can produce, I think, has value, and that's what's been proved, I think, so far. So thank you. Don't go anywhere, Kim. We'll be we have to have a very large coach today and shuffle you along that to fit a lot of people on. So Robin, over to you again.
Yeah. Okay. Moving right along. We have our beautiful and wonderful set painter, not only from the Sherman Playhouse, but I hear she does other work. Hi, Crispy. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing all right.
That's great. It's great to have you on. My God, you have created such wonderful sets, paintings for us, and dressed them up so beautifully. I can't even go through them because I don't have the time. So give us a little bit of your background and where you are now and how the pandemic has been affecting you, if at all.
So I started off as a scenic painter out of college. I went to college for technical theater, and right out of college, I went into doing set painting. And I did that for a few years in a couple regional theaters and summer stock theaters. And then I was having a really hard time, and it was either I need to join the scenic union or find something else. And I ended up focusing more on carpentry. So carpentry became my main focus for the last about 8 years. And I've been working in one of the union scene shops in Southern Connecticut. And 5 years ago, I got my card with the Stagehand Union of Southern Connecticut, Local 74. And once I joined and I got my card, I started loading in shows and just kind of being a general tech for a while. Then one day I was asked to do costumes, help in wardrobe. And I said, well, I haven't done that since like my freshman year of college, but I'll give it a try. And they were so happy with how I did that they were like, so you're on our list and being a regular as a wardrobe dresser. And so I continued working in the shop during the week. And then on weekends, I would do show runs in wardrobe. And then when I would get called, I would come and do some weeknight painting at the Sherman Playhouse. So I'm a little bit all over the place in the tech land. Because I started focusing on wardrobe, I actually ended up going to China last year for about 3 weeks with the touring Broadway show Dreamgirls. And we were in China. It was just one stop. We were in Shanghai. But I was there in December and I came back January 17th, which is about when coronavirus COVID thing was really starting off in China. And I'm getting texts and messages asking if I'm okay. But I was about as close to it as Connecticut is to like Vermont. So, I mean, I'm close, but I wasn't that close to it. You know, I still had my distance. So I flew back here. Then I was able to keep continuing to work. When I came back, my local secured a job with HBO. And so we were working on a set for a show. And I was helping in the electrics department with that. And then the show came to an end. We packed everything up. March 13th was the last day I worked that. And then everything just came to a halt. And there was nothing. Everything was shutting down. All of my friends that were on tour, they all stopped their jobs. Everything just immediately shut down at that point in my world. And I took up side jobs of painting apartments for a friend's mom that's a landlord. So I was painting houses and stuff like that. I got into plants. As you can see some of my plants here, I have a new plant obsession that happened during COVID. And I literally just worked my first gig this past week, helping out, doing general tech and lighting.
Where was that?
That was, it was a freelance job. It was for the beatification of Father McGivney out of New Haven.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was a neat thing, but it was like, you know, that's the first thing that I got to do since March 13th. And I was like, I was nervous. Like, okay, I've been doing this for what, like 15 years now. I've been working in theater and I was nervous to go back to work because I was like, am I going to remember how to do everything? I literally have not done anything. I haven't touched a cable or anything since March 13th. So, but during the quarantine time, I also started doing crafts, and I started an Etsy page and selling jewelry and doing little things like that just to keep myself busy so I wouldn't go stir crazy.
Was the experience that you just had in New Haven, was it weird? Other than, you know, all the 15 years you've done other productions because of restrictions or anything like that?
At first, it was a little surreal. Like, at first, everybody was like, okay, we have to keep our distance. Remember, we have to keep our distance.
Right.
And the whole mask thing, that I finally experienced wearing a mask longer than, when I go to the grocery store. And that was terrible. Doing a 10-hour work shift wearing a mask, it was terrible. And I feel for everybody that has been doing this the whole time. I can't imagine it. Otherwise, I kind of just handled it just as normal as I always have.
Okay, cool. Steve,
Yeah.
you have any?
Well, really, I think I'll maybe pick up on this a little later, really, with the kind of side hustle aspect of things, which is something you hear a lot from actors, who aren't working. Maybe not so much from tech, but obviously that's something you've been kind of forced to look more at. So I think maybe we'll have a little bit of a chat about that later and see how that's affected other people as well, with ways to use their skills. And quite obviously you have a number of skills which hopefully have done you well in this down period. So thank you, Crispy. We'll shuffle you along the couch, and Robin,
Right
you go ahead and introduce our next guest.
Sure. Simon Matthews, how are you?
Hey there, guys. How are you? Good.
Hey, it's the first time we met. Both of us are very excited to have you on. Got your name through Kim, and thank you, Kim, for doing that as well. So just give us a brief history of Simon Matthews in the tech world, and try to make it brief, and then how the pandemic has affected you from when it started to now.
Wait, there's a pandemic? I haven't had internet in a couple of months.
There you go.
I don't want to admit it, please.
I'm a sort of local. I grew up in Danbury for the most part. Graduated Denver High School. I come from sort of a long line of theatrical performers and things like that, my father and grandparents. I was never really that interested in being on the stage. I always enjoyed doing the sort of technical aspects of the shows when I was a kid. Through that, I found myself wanting to do lighting. So I thought, that would be something I wanted to pursue, but an opportunity came at Candlewood Playhouse, which is ultimately where I met Kimmer a few years later. But an opportunity came and somebody had called and said, hey, do you know how to do sound? And I, at the time, had been sort of playing in bands and things like that. And I was like, yeah, of course I know how to do sound. And they asked me a bunch of questions and I totally lied and said I could absolutely do anything that they asked. And showed up and started mixing shows at Candlewood Playhouse. So that was in, I guess, maybe 1989 or 90.
I had no idea you were BSing me all that time, Simon. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. It seems to have worked out okay. So Candlewood Playhouse has been a sort of a great nest for people to come out of over the years in what was in New Fairfield. So I worked there for a number of years and then sort of started down, pursuing a career in New York. Again, sort of, I wouldn't say lying, but always being willing to say yes and to take on whatever opportunities were, presented to me. And through that, I've, worked on a number of Broadway shows over the years and, presently make my living full-time as a production sound engineer for multiple shows and kind of anything else that comes along that has to do with sound. I mean, I'll be happy to do whatever at this point, but I would have to start lying if I was going to work in lighting. But that's basically what I do in sort of encapsulated in a nutshell. Where I was on March 13th, the date, one of the dates that will live in infamy, we were just had our first cast on stage at a new musical called Sing Street, which was at the Lyceum Theater in New York City. That one was a quick load in. It was a quick build. It had sort of come to us in a very strange way, but we built the show in a very short amount of time. We loaded it in. We did, I thought actually we did a great job loading it in. It had some significant technological challenges. There were 4 live keyboards on stage that were to be completely wireless. There was a electronic drum kit that was also fully wireless. So we had to develop in under a month. We developed battery systems and RF systems and built it in the shop, brought it to the theater, installed it. And what was sort of a relief of that process was we were able to, had we stopped one day earlier, there would have, we were able to at least get to the cast on stage and sort of, as that door opens, that door closes on load in, the tech was about to start. And we were able to at least sort of prove to ourselves that we had achieved to some degree, we'd actually gotten through that process. But that's where I was. We had just, the night before, everybody had received emails saying, Broadway is open for business. And even on that day, we literally finished the load in. We brought the instruments over from the rehearsal hall. We had 4 hours to transition everything into the theater and put the cast on stage. And there was, leading up to that, everybody kind of had started everybody knew something was up. And we had heard the news that an usher at one of the other theaters had tested positive. We had known, there were people in other shows that we had been saying, oh boy, this seems, this kind of matches what's going on. And we had done this rehearsal, and boy, it was that thing where like everybody's sharing, handheld mics and singing in each other's faces. And you start, looking at through the lens of what we, know now. It's like, might as well be blowing out candles on a birthday cake. And but we got to that. We basically ran all the music from the show because it was really more of a band sound check than sort of a start of tech. Again, because it was the band being the band was on stage and were the actors. And 4 o'clock came and it was basically, people didn't really know what to do. We had a meeting on stage, producers who were very committed to the show and handled it as well as I think anybody could have hoped to have handled it. We're like, okay, well, we don't know about tomorrow. So we'll, maybe we'll give you a call later, but we're going to go home now because that's what we have to do. And I think everybody at that point really thought, okay, well, we're going to come back in 2 weeks. Or we're going to come back in a month. And that particular show has had some of the best communication thus far from any show. But they, continued every month or so to continue to update everybody with the plans and that they're really wanting to do it. But then eventually, sometime in maybe June or so, we got an email saying, look, we're going to load it out of the theater and, when we're allowed to. And that was, I guess, the middle of August. So, so that was where I was on March 13th. I've been lucky. I've picked up some interesting, jobs related to the industry. Did some work in Vegas, flew out there, was out there for a month. The month of August, I was out there. When I came back, there was a filming of the new musical Diana that was filming for Netflix. So I was able to come in and just be in the local crew to lend a hand where needed for a couple of weeks in September. And then since then, I've basically just been back at home, in Danbury, Connecticut, doing what we all do, which is baking, I guess.
Sourdough, baby.
May I ask you a question, Simon?
You can, of course you can, Jamie.
Yeah. After at 4 p.m. at Sing Street, did you find yourself walking over to Hurley's after that?
No, absolutely not. No. There were 2 parties that evening, one at Hurley's and one at Sardi's. And there was people at Hurley's apparently were all safe. The people at Sardi's, there was a small, super cluster there.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not much of a go outer anyway. So no, it was interesting because immediately when we were packing up, I said, look, let's cover everything. We actually on that show, we had a monitor console in the basement and I was manning that during the rehearsal. And meanwhile, I was like, hey guys, let's just start packing it up like we're not going to be here for a while. And we sort of managed to put everything basically away. And then when the end of day came, we said, no, let's cover all the instruments. Let's get some Visqueen and cover everything like we're not going to be here for a while. And there was a lot of, like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And I hate to have been the, you know, bearer of the bad news, but that was in hindsight sort of the right thing to have done.
Yeah, your story just brought me back to that day, and I was at Hurley's maybe for about 20 minutes around 4:30. I did not stay for probably the similar reasons you didn't go. And just it felt like it was almost every single Broadway stagehand. And
yeah, I know that a lot of people had gone there, but
yeah.
you know, again, driving home, we had, you know, I actually rewinding. I was backstage at Girl from the North Country, and ex Candlewooder John Sibley, who was the A2 on Girl from the North Country, said to me, and he was like Nostradamus. He had seen some news article and he said, "Oh, this is bad. This is going to be bad. Broadway is going to end up closing down because of this." And I thought, "You're insane. You're just, you know, not. This can't be true." And you know, obviously, it did come true, but it was back in January that I became a little more hyper aware of it than I probably would have because of sort of ongoing reports from him. So by the time we had gotten to, I mean, the last couple of days of load in, we had really started doing like, you know, it was like elbow bumps or like we'd, you know, high five, but with our feet. And there was a lot of hand washing and there was no masks worn, but notably like we were not going out to lunch. We would go and just get something at the, you know, at the Pret down the street. And I remember, you know, seeing the sort of difference that like some people, when they would go into Pret, would pull their sleeve down and open the door with the sleeve. And then I would see other people walking down, you know, 6th Avenue, you know, coughing into their hands, and, you know, things you become aware of are pretty strange. But it was a very surreal day for sure to be in the theater in New York. You know, I think everybody really thought it wasn't going to be this long.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I think
so Simon, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, I think that's the first sort of first-hand account that we've had of what was happening on Broadway, and as we've said in other shows, you know, the American theatre and worldwide theatre isn't Broadway, but Broadway is a good indicator of mood, and it's really interesting to hear sort of what went on that day and the way people were feeling. That you know, things should come back in a week or two, but obviously they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think, you know, obviously collectively none of us have ever experienced anything like this, and I think that I remember, you know, I've worked on Broadway long enough to have been there on September 11th and 2008, you know, when the sort of housing market, the bubble crashed, and throughout all of those, you know, entertainment has always been something that has survived and in some ways thrived because, you know, as a release of stress, people seek entertainment and escapism. But it was apparent that day to everybody in the room that wasn't going to be how this was going to go. And none of us really knew how to prepare ourselves for it. You know, and a lot of us, you know, who work a lot, really had no, you know, it's like you're just sort of the engines revved up and like, you know, we came home that night and it was like, well, you know, what are we going to do? And even today, there are still emails that will come through that are like, guys, this is like, I don't know, nobody's working. I know that everybody just wants to send emails to do something, but, you know, it was decompressing from that took some time. Now I have no idea how I'm ever going to go back to work. You know?
I think a lot of people probably feel the same. That they'll either have got themselves into a different mindset, or even into a different career or a different path. Which
well, I think I think that there is to come out of this, there's probably things that the discussions won't happen, but this would be a good time to discuss things like 10 out of 12s and other practices that, 10
out of 12s.
Oh, well, so 10 out of 12s is where the stagehands work 16 hours, but the actors can be called.
Thank you for bringing this up, because if there's one thing I want to change, it's this.
So so in union theater, there's rules, and rules are born out of necessity, and to give people a construct to work within. And one of the constructs is that the actors during the technical rehearsals and preview period can be called for 10 out of 12 hours, meaning that their day can start at noon or 12:30, and with a break can work 10 hours until midnight, which then the stagehands will be in at 8 a.m. and have worked from 8 a.m. till midnight, with 2 1-hour breaks, usually from 12 to 1, and then something like 5:30 to 6:30 or something. But this is like, it's a practice that is, really hazardous to everybody's health, and but it's just because it's allowable that it happens. And nobody likes to work after 10. No good decisions are ever made after 10. I mean, I think there are certain, the twilight hours can be very creative hours, but it's typically not that way, because you're not starting at 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. and working till 3 in the morning.
Yep.
So, I think that maybe there's going to be an opportunity for us to change some work practices. Something like my solution to that is simply a 10-hour turnaround, non-negotiable 10-hour turnaround. You want to work till midnight, we come in at 10. This would be a super unpopular opinion for a lot of people who view overtime as part of their sort of normal salary. But I think from a life safety and a work-life balance issue, it would be really good to work that out. I think there are other, having worked on some productions where we've had numbers of weeks where we haven't had a single day off, working till 10 or midnight, I think there should be sort of lines that you can't cross. Like, you can't work, let's say you can't work a 14th and 15th day in a row, things like that. So those are things I'd like to see come out of this. If there was a silver lining, that would certainly, from a work perspective, be what that would be for me.
That's another thing we've kind of heard as well, as to what may shake out of this from reflection on work practices, reflection on social issues that are affecting theatre and performances as well, all those kind of things.
I think the challenge will be that we'll all be so hungry, literally, for work from a financial aspect and from a, boy, I really need to just get out of my house aspect, that when work does really resume, I don't think that anybody will feel like they're in a position to, make any improvements to those aspects of the business. But I think that this is an opportunity, and hopefully that can, maybe it can happen. Unlikely.
Yeah, well, again, we don't know what the next few months will bring, so possibly. Robin, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
No, well, just quickly, you touched on union work. How how do you feel that unions are handling this on your end?
I think the unions have been handling it very well. I don't typically get my work through the union insofar as getting called, to work on a given call through the hall or anything. But I do get my health care provided through IATSE, and they've worked very hard to keep people on health care at maximum duration as I think they can.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to them for that. Having worked, we loaded Frozen the musical out. That was the first work back on Broadway, and that was, it's more done in accordance with the employer's rules than with the union's rules. But there was a collaborative effort to sort of talk about distancing and, a lot of things that it's impossible to be socially distant and do a loadout in a real sense. Like, there's even with a reduced crew size, we had about a 50% reduction in crew size to a normal loadout. But even still, you're sort of working, everybody needs to work in the same location at the same time. But people were very respectful, and that loadout was successful from both a loadout perspective and a safety perspective. When we working on the filming of Diana, we were living in 2 bubbles. There was the front of house bubble and a backstage bubble. And that literally meant once you came on set, if you will, that included the hotel, we basically stayed in our rooms. You got COVID tested, you quarantined while you got COVID tested in the hotel. And then you were brought, you were escorted to the theater every day, and you stayed in the theater. Meals were provided. You wore a mask all day, except when you were eating, and you went back to the hotel room, being escorted back to the hotel room at night, and that lasted for a couple of weeks. But that also was a very safe experience. We had a COVID officer who was looking out for everybody's best interest and making sure that people were you know, wearing their masks properly and, you know, following as many protocols as possible.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you, Simon. Again, don't go anywhere.
Okay, I won't.
We'll keep an eye on you. And back over to Robin. Who would we speak to next?
Let's go to Amy. How are you, Amy?
I'm not doing too bad. How you doing?
Good. Amy and I know each other from a few shows we've done together. And I know she and her husband have done a lot of theater together. She's done a lot of stage managing, some directing. And we just about a year ago, well, no, we did Much Ado together with your husband, which was great. But before that was a major production from a director named Steve Stott, who did a show called Jack and the Beanstalk. And that was an amazing use of your skills in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
And that was a trying show. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that tried us all, and it couldn't have happened without Amy. Absolutely, definitely.
Right. Well, there was trial and there's success. So, so Amy, tell us a bit about your history in the theater and how the pandemic has affected you.
Okay, well, I got a degree in theater arts from Salve Regina University. They didn't have like the 2-track programs like a lot of places do, so I had to do both the acting and the tech end. I did focus a lot more on the tech end. Then after that, I ended up with a theater company in Rhode Island called the Rhode Island Stage Ensemble. And I ended up being on the board of directors there and was head of the front of house. Actually, the last show I did with them was my first full-length play that I directed, and that was Pride and Prejudice. Then I came over to Connecticut, and I instantly got involved with the Sherman Playhouse. Jeff's my husband. He was doing a show there. He was doing Taming of the Shrew, and I just said, yeah, I do all the tech things. Do you need help? And I just kind of went from there. I've done some stuff with New Canaan. I've primarily stage managed in Connecticut, but I've done a couple of I've done a directing thing or two here and there, and that pretty much more or less brings us up to current. After the Christmas show that I did, I was on board for doing the flight choreography for Peter and the Starcatcher over at Center Stage. And I also am a fighter for the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair that's in the area. So I was gearing up for the two things side by side. And then this hit, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to be able to do this? And obviously we had to close it because that is a massive cast we had. It's Peter and the Starcatcher is a huge cast.
Yes.
And then we also postponed the fair season until next year as well. So everything shut down. Usually what'll happen is I'll have someone message me going, so we need a techie. Can you do the thing? And I usually say, yes. Which thing do you need me to do? But since nobody's doing anything, I haven't really been doing it much in the way of theater. I started to do some research because there's a play I actually want to write, but that's going to be a couple years in the making because I have a lot of research. It's a historical fiction set in Newport because I'm very familiar with Newport.
So, Amy, the sort of Renaissance, or as it's really pronounced, Renaissance in real English, the Renaissance Fair. How involved with that are you? Because I know you're a fighter, and that doesn't mean she wears boxing gloves and punches people out, but you're a weapons expert and with swords and you go the whole way with the choreography for fights and the staging as well. Is your involvement in the Renaissance Fair really as a performer, or are you involved in the organization and choreography in that kind of thing?
I'm more involved as a performer at the Renaissance Fair. I have done side projects with them. Like I've written a couple of scripts for some vignettes. I've done some of the, like assisted with the costuming. I've assisted with the makeup, because when I say I'm a jack of all trades, I kind of am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do a little bit of everything, because sometimes
I think
that's what's needed.
anybody backstage typically has to. You know, there's very few people backstage who don't have to turn their hand to a number of things. Because what I was really thinking about was that sort of large scale public display fair. In one sense, the performance aspects of that would seem to be something that is maybe easier to stage in a socially distanced way, or am I wrong on that?
You're wrong on that. The reason why you're wrong is, yes, there are, you know, we do have, you know, sets and performances and all that stuff, but they're not really sets. They're more like, here's a couple of props, here's the backdrop of a field, go. But you have all the actors that are improvising and going throughout and talking to the patrons, and there's a lot of interaction in that way. There's just so much involved in a fair, because you also have the vendors in which the actors go and interact with and try to say, hey, look at this cool stuff to the patrons, you know, or there's other people's shows which you'll try to, you know, because it's a giant supportive network. So when you're acting, you're also supporting, and you're almost running tech at the same time, but you're still acting. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, and how about that kind of industry of sort of performance fighting training? Because I know that you've kind of been involved in that as well. Has that survived in any form at all at the moment?
The group that I'm involved with, they haven't really been doing anything, because it's too difficult to. When you're doing any sort of stage combat whatsoever, you have to get in each other's spaces, and you can't keep that safe distance. There's no way to do it safely.
Yeah, so. I mean, this is one of those sort of associated industries and associated activities, which has had a knock-on effect from COVID, which maybe, you know, people aren't necessarily aware of. You know, you initially think about theatre, but then you start to think about, okay, tech. Then you start to think about, okay, well, dancers. Yeah, dancers can't do that. Okay, musicians, front of house, fight choreographers. Yeah, so it becomes it very quickly becomes obvious that
it's like a slinky running down the stairs. It's gaining speed the further it gets.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm fascinated by that side of things that you and Jeff have got involved in, mainly because I saw what went into it for a very limited fight scene for Jack and the Beanstalk, which you know, the attention to detail that you guys put into that, and the focus on safety as well. I was very, very impressed with that. So thinking about that,
safety's the number one rule.
Absolutely, thinking about that on such a larger scale as a Renaissance Fair or a production, a full production, you know, it does bring it into a little bit perspective how many people must be involved in that side of the industry. So Robin, do you have anything you would like to chat about?
No, that's great stuff. Thanks, Amy. Please stay on the couch. If you don't mind, Steve, we'll go to our next guest.
Absolutely.
Okay. Andy Henry, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Don't know you personally, but I know if Kim suggested you must be fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And just tell us a brief synopsis of your career and how the pandemic has affected you.
Well, I started as a lighting designer in college. Went to SUNY Purchase right down the road in the early 80s. Oh, and then, oh, you went there too?
Yeah, me too.
Oh, congratulations. And I left school and worked for my lighting teacher and mentor for a couple of years doing off-Broadway, Broadway, regional, mostly regional. By this point, he was a regional designer. So I worked for him for a couple of years and then started working in town, doing my own work for a while. And I became very good friends with a lighting designer who unfortunately just passed away a couple of weeks ago, named Hal Binkley. And Broadway, very prolific lighting designer on Broadway. And when we were palling around in the early 80s, we would, or mid 80s by this point, we would spell each other on work. And it was mostly me covering the jobs that he couldn't do. I used to like to think that I reciprocated, but it was mostly me covering him. And one day he said, "You got to cover me." And he was doing a play in La Jolla Playhouse. So he said, I have to go to San Diego. And you have to go to Palm Springs and cover me on a job doing an industrial show. And I said, what's an industrial show? Coming from theater and opera and dance, so I had no idea what that was. So he said, "Oh, you'll figure it out. It's they have a bucket of lights and you go over there and light it." And so it was a large scale industrial show, which I had to kind of like come up with a on-site light plot for and make it work. And I brought a theatrical sense to it, which apparently was appreciated. And because I guess every time in the past it was lights on, lights off. And so I was asked to do the next few shows, and that turned into a 15-year job. And then from there I met, from there I started getting work in industrial shows and started weaning myself, not intentionally, but it just worked out that way, away from theater and dance. I was getting tired of touring with dance companies, and not tired of it, it was just getting hard. And the kids started to come, and then my children started to come. So going on long tours was getting more difficult, and quick 5-10 day jobs was a lot easier. So I started doing corporate work. And that work ranges from most market sectors: automotive, pharmaceutical is a big one. Not so much anymore, but pharmaceutical was huge in the 90s. Tech is a big one now too. Financial, insurance, and so forth. So I started a company in the late 80s, and then recently I merged with another company called UVLD, which is a group of we're about 15 lighting designers and programmers, and we do corporate jobs pretty much all over the country and all over the world. And I've been doing that. I guess I started when I was in 10th grade in high school, and now I'm 61, and I've been doing it ever since. So.
Awesome. And how has the pandemic affected anything in your career?
Oh, well, February 15th was the last day I worked. I was in Dallas, Texas, doing an Amgen pharmaceutical job. And we had just finished, and I was going out with a bunch of the audio guys afterwards to have a dinner and drink and then go home the next day. And that was the last day I worked, and that was the last day I had red meat or wore a button-up shirt or anything else. I mean, I've done a few things since then, but it shut down. Unfortunately, it was February 15th, and I had a lot of work scheduled. March 1st, I was supposed to go to Italy and China and Germany and all these other places, and domestic. And I was pretty much booked up for the year. And I said, I got to get some time. And so I took 2 weeks off from February 15th to March 1st. And little did I know that I probably could have squeezed in a couple of jobs before it all shut down. But everything shut down, and I just watched my calendar empty pretty quickly. I was boarding a plane when I got told to get off at one point because the governor of California had shut the state down, and we couldn't do our production. Since then, I did one job in August, which was a Northwest Mutual Life Insurance Show, which is an annual meeting in Milwaukee that we do every year. I've done it for about 7 or 8 years now. At the no, actually about 5 years at the FISEV Arena in Milwaukee. It's an event for about 12,000 people in a basketball arena, and that got canceled, obviously. So they said, well, we're going to do the meeting live, but we're going to do it in the arena. We're going to scale it down and do it with like 300 or 400 people. And then that way they'll have the feel of the show that the people have seen, and do it for a live broadcast instead of a live audience. And then the governor shut down even doing that. So we wound up going to their home office in Milwaukee and making a soundstage, a 50 by 50 soundstage in their home office. And we were able to just do a live broadcast from there with bringing in their different regions and so forth, bringing just the key people putting them on stage. And then they had John Legend at the end and that kind of thing. So it was what with only John Legend and the piano. So it was, it wasn't a full band. And, but it's interesting. As far as what's going to happen in the future, I think Broadway. I'm hearing end of 21. Third quarter 21. Lincoln Center's closed all of 21. The opera world is kind of shut down because of that. I think the corporate world will probably show up a little earlier, maybe only because you go to a Broadway show and people are from all over the world coming to see a Broadway show. You go to a music concert, there are people from all over the place. But you go to a corporate event, they're the same tribe of people. So, they may be from California, or they may be from the Midwest, or even from Europe, but they're told what to do, from their corporate structure, that they're told how to behave, wear masks, do things like this, sit far apart. And if you don't, you're going to lose your job. So I think that people being frightened by that, they may open up a little earlier and get people to be in live events. But I feel so bad for everybody else. My daughter is a scenic artist, and she works at one of the set shops up in Newburgh, New York, and they're closed down too. For all the Broadway shows coming in, but she just started to work on a Michael Jackson musical that's I guess set up to come in. And they're painting the drops and they're folding them up and putting them in storage. But I think their idea is that when they do open up, they're going to be first in the gate with a new musical. Right. So who knows when that's going to be.
Okay, Steve, anything?
Yeah, just thinking about the sort of corporate world and the fact that they have the flexibility. And probably the will to still be able to mount the corporate events. Have you been involved in the broadcasting technology of those, or how has that affected you? Because with remote satellite offices, often you would have some form of that anyway. But were you not bringing everybody together into into a large hotel or a large venue? Have you been involved in any of that side of things?
I have been a little bit. Again, we just made a sound stage, so it was all remote. So everyone just sat in their offices. It was like a giant Zoom meeting, I guess, but a closed circuit Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I've kept in touch with all my colleagues, and a lot of the stage managers are working a lot. They seem to be pretty busy. Some of the technical directors are busy doing these remote virtual events. Apparently, everybody hates them. It's a necessary evil. They have to get out in front of the people, but it's not a desired method of communications in any way. I think they really need to get together and meet and greet, press the flash, as they say.
Yeah.
And, let the ideas go around the coffee table, around the bars, and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of interested as well in the shift in technology and the shift in approach in that kind of environment where you're not dealing with the large scale. Right. Have you had to relearn any techniques from your earlier career where you're maybe dealing with smaller scale stuff?
Absolutely. One thing I've had to become more proficient in is video. We've always done live video, but it's live. So there's a video wall behind it or something along those lines, but it's not broadcast quality. Oh, it's broadcast quality, but it's not broadcast quality like you see on the Colbert Show or something like that. Where
Yes,
it's
staged to be
video.
staged.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that's a whole different skill set. And I did do it earlier in my career. I did some television work, but all of a sudden I had to I forgot. It's been a while. So, and they're still trying to get the same live feel, but I've become a video lighting designer. In the more recent work.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and I mean that kind of leads us, I think, into our next guests. I think, Robin, as we sort of move to Donnie and Jamie and Andrew, it's that notion of having to move to a different way of working, and seeing where that takes us. And that was quite a theme of our last sort of tech heavy show. So I'm interested to see where that's going now. So Robin, would you like to just make a link?
One question real quick to Andy before we get to Donnie and Jamie. So Andy, you mentioned that you had a daughter working was working in the Newburgh facility for set design. Does she want out of the business because of this pandemic?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. Because we have been trying to gauge people, and if they want to quit, a lot of them say absolutely not. We're going to work. We're going to do as much as we can. We're going back into it and stuff like that. I'm assuming she has that same attitude.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's appreciating the time off because she's an artist and she's getting to do her own work, and I guess she's on some sort of unemployment and PUA and so forth. So she's saying, I'm going to take advantage of this, and she's doing a lot of her own painting. But when she's back for 3 weeks this week, and she's ecstatic to go back.
Okay.
Also socially, I mean, she just wants to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But there's only, they have, I think they have about 100 employees there, but they're only bringing back 6 people. So she said, well, I'll make do with those 6 people, but because they can't keep them separated enough.
Yeah.
And there's not enough work. There's only the Michael Jackson musical coming in right now.
Right. All right. Well, that's good to hear about the attitude. That's wonderful. So let's move over to Donnie and Jamie. We'll start with Donnie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Robin. How are you doing?
Doing well. From the last show, we've heard about your whole wonderful experience up to this point. Give a shout out for your company, what they've been doing recently, and I do want you to get into what happened in Morris, and how things got affected there, and then for the future of DNR and everything like that.
You gave me a huge intro last time, so I'll give a quick recap. I own a system integration company that does performing arts centers, lighting design, lighting, video, audio, design, integration, sales, support, service. Been doing theater since 4th grade with you when I was laying PCM mics out on the grass for Shakespeare in Woodbury, outside of the original Woodbury Valley. Kim, I know you. We did Nutcracker in 2013 at Pomperog. I was sort of helping you as an electrician. Cliff Becker ran the auditorium. I don't know if you remember me, but I definitely remember you.
Pomperog?
Yeah, Pomperog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Cliff just quit a couple of years ago, retired.
He retired about 5 years ago. As a new guy, Charlie, that I work with, because I'm the integrator at that auditorium as well. So, and Crispy, I just saw you this week. How you doing? Yeah. Integration firm. Obviously, this affects us greatly because, no one's buying lighting, sound, or video. I haven't sold a PA to a theater since March 13th, actually. No one's buying video walls. Nobody's buying anything. What they are buying is video streaming equipment, and we pivoted the company quickly. We've always done video streaming installations for venues, but God Almighty, has it taken off now? and it's taken off huge in House of Worship. And it's taken off slowly in theater, and there's been a huge learning experience, and I'll get into all that shortly. But there's also a lot of other really unique projects that I never thought I'd be involved with, or that are somewhat artistic, that Jamie and I are very involved in. Not just Morris, just like outside laser show stuff that we'll get into in a second. But the video has been interesting. You know, someone tonight said, it's a theater I'm working with, the director just turned to me in the meeting and said, why do I just need to provide bad TV? I'm like, oh boy. You know, they said, this is nothing but TV. We should just be a TV studio if we're going to put these cameras in. And I want to touch on that a little bit more, see what people's thoughts on that are. I think people are missing the idea that this needs to be a hybrid approach. You can't just put cameras in and stream and have an empty audience. I think the audience is still very much a part of it. I'm still a big believer that the most success we've had with these installations, which we're on to like, almost 50 installations now in performing arts centers, from private schools to high school auditoriums to church/assembly halls that also act as theaters and places where House of Worship happens. I'm still telling everyone, you have to have two directors. I can't stress that enough, a director for the show and a director for the video. And those two directors need to be completely in communication. And then the other thing that I keep trying to drive down people's heads is that it becomes really 3 audio mixes. It becomes monitors, it becomes the room, and it becomes video. And video absolutely needs to be a separate mix, and people are just like, oh, we'll hand you you know, a matrix off the console and it'll be fine. And I'm like, no, it's not even close. So there's that we're learning about. Well, we always kind of knew that, but it's trying to educate other people that, like, this is what you need to do to have successful streaming video from your performing arts center. And then the other thing is, we're really digging into the platforms that integrate with the box office and provide the paywall. And some have been a disaster, some have been average. I think it's going to come down to who's the lesser of evils, who takes the lesser fees, who is that. I'm actually probably going to do a whole podcast in about a month on what we've done, what we've tried, where we've failed, what is good, and probably interview some of these theaters, their executive directors. I can tell you that a lot of people have been turning to Crowdcast. We have a love-hate for it, but the paywall is huge. And the big thing I learned is the paywall integrated with your box office ticketing, especially when you have a hybrid model. It's been a disaster in some places. It's been successful in others. The box office didn't think anything of it. They just sold someone a virtual ticket and emailed them a link, and they did no more. In other places, they had to sell them a virtual ticket, then they had to email them a link, then they had to send them a password. So I'm going to put out a whole podcast about what's been successful, what's been not. But the same principles that I talked about in the last presentation was director, audio, and the paywall for box office. The cameras, the streamer, the production switcher, all that's easy. That stuff's cake. Anybody can, well, we also talked about the quality of that stuff too, and the demand and the availability, but the technology is the cake. It's the integration of the arts to the program you're doing, and the paywall and the audio that are key. So we've been really busy with that. I will tell you that there are some major theaters that have decided not to do it at all, or they're going to wait it out. I will, in this theater, be happy to have me mention their name. They're more of a Broadway house. It's the Palace Theater in Waterbury. They have great concerns about putting it in for a number of reasons. Is it a waste of money? Any show that comes already has it. If a Broadway tour is going to allow to stream, the Broadway tour is going to bring their own video crew and manage it end to end for chain of custody and quality control. They only see a value in it for rock and roll, that won't tour with it and they can sell it. And then there's union concerns. Not that there's any problems with the union, but does the union have enough people to staff this equipment? Does the union have jurisdiction? Does the union not have jurisdiction? When is there a line? So there's also a lot of red tape. So yeah, we've been busy.
No, I mean, that's great to hear. You know, just how that's sort of taken off for you. And I know that's really where we were last time we spoke. You know, things were ramping up, and the stories that you were telling about things you were starting to get involved in were were fascinating. So I'm really pleased that, you know, that's building up momentum, and also interested to hear that story about the Palace Theatre and presumably other venues as well, who it's not a foregone conclusion that's what they're going to do.
half my job is sales prevention. I've been like the Palace. We had a long meeting this week or last week, and I said, you know what? We mutually decided to wait probably another 6 months before even entertaining it. You know, I said, please save your money at this point. I don't think this brings you any value at this point. And they agreed. And, you know, the Palace is more of a Broadway touring house and self-produced rock and roll. So, you know, it's not like it's the Klein Memorial in Bridgeport that does a ton of self-producing. And they've purchased a system and they use it almost every other weekend. They've been very successful with it. The regional theaters have been buying systems and been very successful with it. Local high schools and middle schools have been buying systems and been very successful, but where it's been a total failure is, you know, it was a total failure at the Schubert, total failure at the Bushnell. The systems are there, but they don't know what to do with it. I almost feel guilty selling it to them. And I think it's going to be the big houses in Connecticut, the Bushnells, the Schuberts, the Palace and Stanford. Are they going to even bother with a system, or is it come with the tour, or is it even going to, you know, there's that. So
I guess the longer the hiatus in sort of in-person performance goes on, you know, the more that will drive not necessarily the demand to stage things that way, but the will and the knowledge on how to do that. Because I imagine half the issue is when faced with this new technology, how are you going to structure your performance to really make the most of it? Because again, as we've heard, the technology it's not the thing. The performance has to be the thing, has to be, you know, what is correct. And if the performance can't be staged in such a way as to make the most of the technology, then, you know, you really might as well not bother.
Yeah, it's pretty anemic. If the performance isn't really, like you said, if you don't have a separate director for video, it's a little bit of an anemic. It's kind of a weak video. You know, it's just like, this is what's going on. You can watch it.
Yeah, and and thinking about Amy. Hi, Amy. Just thinking about you.
Nice to meet you, Amy.
Yeah, your experience of directing, stage managing, and doing a range of tech in that sense, and Crispy to a large extent as well. My thought is that this is maybe an opportunity for people with those skills, with those can-do problem-solving skills, to embrace another aspect of directing that maybe doesn't have the personnel yet and the skills. You know, I see that as quite an opportunity for people over the next next 6 months to a year to really get involved in that side of things. So so Robin touched on this, and this was the large music venue show that you were mounting at the time we last spoke, and we've kind of heard stories about how that went, and difficulties, not so much technical difficulties with staging. I know you can tell us all about that, but just the organizational bureaucratic part of it as well. So what can you tell us about that side of things?
Yeah, so Jamie's been there more than me. So just a quick background. I have a customer that I'm their integrator, and they own a couple music venues in Connecticut. And they decided to put this project up, being the only large-scale music venue in Connecticut. And I think it was a bold feat, and I think it was a great idea. I was hired on as both a vendor and a technical director to the venue, even though there's a production manager. And I, was responsible from power infrastructure to point of sale network to satellite internet to selling a PA, selling video. What was sort of genius about this venue is he decided to buy everything. because if this venue didn't work out, he'd move it to another venue, which was awesome for me, obviously, not to sound biased, but it was a huge box sale or integration sale for a temporary venue, which was earth shattering in these times. It was mind blowing that this was even this was even a deal. Logistically, tech wise, the venue and I'm not, Jamie's been on the lighting. I have nothing to do with the lighting. I'd say tech-wise, the venue has been a total success. For being, it might as well be on an island. It might as well literally be on an island with no power, running water, or internet, because we had a whole team of people help bring that in. We brought, I mean, there's no, you can't get internet there. It's too far from the road, and they won't do the construction costs to bury fiber or coax in. There's no electricity. None at all. And Eversource is like, yeah, we'll be there in a year bringing that 800 amp service in. There's no running water. There's no stage, no structure. So the place on a technical level, and this is a whole team of people. So I'm going to toot their horn. Pulled it off, total miracle. Again, it might as well be on a Caribbean island, completely remote, and it operates 24/7.
It might as well be the Fire Festival, but successful. And on a farm.
Yeah. So on a technical level, I think it's been an absolute success. Production-wise, absolute success. Weather-wise, up until now, phenomenal. Noise pollution, traffic, logistics, COVID, I'll let Jamie speak on all that. I'd say the venue overall, I'll walk out of the whole experience that what a miracle. A lot of people in production were put to work. A lot of people in arts were put to work. A lot of people in house management, bar, concession. A lot of people made a lot of money up there and did really, really well. And the shows were phenomenal. And the artists were, I don't think a single artist left there saying this isn't the most unbelievable experience, especially in COVID times. But there are issues. There are logistical issues that Jamie, if you want to touch on, and then I do want to talk about the other projects that me and Jamie are up to that are bizarre. But Jamie, go ahead.
Look, I just want to start by saying I'm a lighting designer. I actually, hearing Simon talk and Andrew talk, I was relating so heavily to two aspects of both of your stories, because Simon, I was 2 blocks away from you that day too, and went through a lot of similar stuff. And Andrew, I do very little corporate work, but that Monday before the Thursday that Broadway shut down is when my one big corporate job in the year canceled. And I remember going to all of my Broadway friends, kind of inconsolably being like, I lost my biggest job of the year financially. And no one, it hadn't set in with them yet until that Thursday. And it was just, and then finally it felt like my friends, my own community could relate to what I was going through on that Monday. And then I was out of work for 6 months, as most of us have been. And what a difficult 6 months, until Donnie thankfully called me and said, we've got this crazy project. Can you be there tomorrow?
Yeah, I called you like 12 hours. I'm sorry.
And I showed up to a field, and we made something out of nothing, outdoors and incredibly safe under the circumstances. Is anything really safe these days? No, but certainly more safe and more respectful of whatever guidelines we have in front of us than any other opportunities for entertainment out there that involve you actually going out. And it didn't happen overnight. There were some learning curves, especially in the first couple of weeks with front of house, with security. But it was learned, and with weather, like any outdoor show has, I think people freak out about it instead of just accepting, whoa, outdoor theater's been happening for years. We just, let's build in rescheduling dates. Let's build in a process for something that we know is probably inevitable at some point. That being said, something that's going to affect theaters, you will no longer be able to get a insurance policy for theater, for closed shows. It's going to really change the industry in a lot of ways, but maybe in a way that we can structure the business model differently that will be successful for everyone. But to me, what we have learned at the farm is that I think this is what theater is, what the closest we can get to theater and live entertainment for the next year or so is going to be outdoors. Look, this is an evolving, information is evolving. We don't know everything perfectly, but the best evidence does really show that if you are outside, you are very, very safe. And I would love to see us theaters transitioning to trying to do more outdoor stuff next year, or if down south now. You know, we have to close the farm, and for this summer, by May, when you would have needed to be mounting a show, everything was new and changing too fast. We're lucky we got this up for the last 2-3 months of the summer and beginning of the fall, but now is the time for theaters to start planning for their season next year to be done outdoors, because it can be done successfully, it can be done responsibly. And now is the time to do that, and we've been greatly successful with it out at the farm. But it also brings me to the other projects that Donnie and I have coming up, and these are experiences, and experiences that can happen outside. Is it traditional theater? No. And why? Because you have to keep people moving. If you're going to be doing an outdoor experience in the cold right now, you have to keep your patrons moving in some fashion, whether that is in vehicles that are heated or whether that is walking. There's a holiday light show experience coming up that Donnie and I are collaborating on. I'm the lighting designer for it, also taking a strong hand in sort of just creative direction of the event as a whole, and how to move people through it, and how to sort of give it a bit of a story of the night, and incorporating live performers safely, responsibly. And this is the kind of, we will also learn that audiences will show up to pretty much anything right now, and anything at all. So creating outdoor experiences that are safe and responsible, it seems to be where we're headed for a while, in my mind. And I think it can be done very successfully, and much more successfully than, in my opinion, the live streaming of things where you feel out of touch. This is still something in touch and in person, and it's really exciting to me.
I mean, that's fascinating, and I've seen, you know, ads and people commenting on, you know, this experience going on and that experience going on, the, you know, holiday light show, or, you know, pumpkin fest, or whatever the thing might be. Are you getting involved with people who have done that kind of thing before, or is this effectively brand new for people?
So I would say that what it feels like to me is the sort of these sort of experiences that have already happened. Those attractions are hiring the same people that they've had for years. So what's coming to us now are a lot of people trying to create something for the very first time that maybe don't have the skills in this area, which is why relying on theater people and storytellers to give a reason for the event as a whole to be happening, to rely on theater people, especially with immersive theater experience, both on the artistic storytelling side and the technical side, because that comes with its own expertise needed into how to craft a show that can happen over a large area of space. We're finding that at least the people coming to us are not experienced necessarily in having done anything like this before, but this is why the skills that we have as technical artists of the theater apply greatly, and more than just, hey, I'm not just the lighting designer on this, I'm going to help you craft this whole evening, and lighting is going to be the nucleus to that, both in terms of the artistic connections and the technology connecting the entire space together.
Yeah, and that kind of shoots back a little bit to Andrew, as you were talking about the start of your career in sort of corporate events, that you went from theatrical to corporate events and took that sensibility with you. It sounds like there's, you know, we're at that position where there's another opportunity for someone with a technical bent and an artistic sensibility to make something wonderful happen. And I mean, I'm looking around the people we've got here. Obviously, we've got, you know, very technical people here, people with a lot of skills. I'm just going to throw this one out to in general. How hopeful are you that one, you'll be going back to do the things you have been doing in the past, sort of within the next 6 months or a year, and how much do you think you'll need to adapt to a new way of working and new technology? I'm just going to throw that one out to the team, see if anyone's got any comments on that. Sounds no one wants to be the first to speak. Jeremy will be the first to speak.
So I'll be the first to speak this time. I know I am trying to do everything I can right now to set myself.
Oh, we've lost you, Jamie.
What's that?
We lost your sound.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I think maybe Donnie muted you, but there you go.
So I know what I'm trying to do right now is just set myself up stronger than ever to come back to being a theatrical lighting designer, and to come back to it more responsibly than the way I was treating my career before this happened. I spend almost every day in a 10 out of 12. That as a lighting designer, I bounce tech to tech, and almost irresponsibly don't have time to do the prep work on most of my shows, because the appropriate prep work, because I'm just moving from 10 out of 12 to 10 out of 12.
Yeah.
And I would like to sort of be able to return to doing musicals and plays, but when we return, taking less work so that the work I do take, I can commit more time to.
And it sounds as though you've gained a lot of skills from and technical experience from what you're doing in the interim. Do you feel you can take that back to traditional theatre?
Yeah, I think the skill, I don't know if I've learned any new technical skills. I think I've found new ways of applying unique skills that I had, and sort of from the unique kind of theater I did on top of more traditional theater that I've been able to bring to these other places. But I think what I've learned from doing some rock and roll instead of traditional theater is there's a different way of budgeting that, if done appropriately, I think could assume a lot less risk for the people that front the money in traditional theater budget, and that could turn the attention also more toward new works, and set up a different structure where everyone can win while having less risk, instead of the current system where there's such high risk, and then most shows fail and don't make money, and then the ones that do are slam dunks. And then I think there's a way of I know for what I've learned from the rock and roll world, sort of spreading out the risk and then also spreading out the success and who makes money.
I mean, that's fascinating, because again, that's something we haven't really heard. We've heard about hard practical skills, and we've heard about changes in approach. You know, the realization of the way the business works is, I think, something that we haven't really heard about. The fact that there's been, you know, having this other perspective has informed that. So that I mean, that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I think now is the time for people to be in their small bubbles, creating new works that are shared and conceived and devised together and as a group. And when it is time for the industry to start back up again, if one of those is a hit, that those creative rights can be shared among a group and spread to a community of people that helped create a thing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think Jamie brings up the business will never be the same, because I mean, it may go back to some extent, but the projects that me and him are working on that are creative as well as technical are structured in a financial business way that I've never seen in 15 years. And we'll see if they're successful. And if they are successful and profitable for everyone involved and entertaining and bring an audience, then I don't see why that business model might not be adapted. We'll see.
Oh, fascinating. No, that is fascinating. Crispy, again, you're a master of lots of trades. I won't say you're a jack of all trades. You're a master of all these different trades. Again, you know, do you feel you'll be back to working the way you did work, or do you think you'll be working in a different way?
So I've been putting a lot of my focus into moving more into the world of wardrobe, and I really have been thoroughly enjoying that. And actually, I left this out before, but before I was in the interviewing process, and I was about ready to sign a contract to go on tour with one of the touring Broadway shows. And then with all of this, I've been thinking, I'm like, I'm going to wear a mask as long as I can. You know, with wardrobe, you don't really think about it when you're working backstage. It's tiny quarters. Everybody's right on top of each other. I mean, a cast of 50 and there's maybe 5 dressers, and we are taking, you know, each of us have anywhere between 5 to 10 actors that we are taking care of, getting dressed and everything. And you're doing everything to fixing collars, neckties, everything. You're right on top of them. Their sweat is on your hands. I will probably be going back to work wearing gloves, and I will hate it, because anyone that knows me, I don't even wear work gloves when I'm like doing hanging lights or cabling or doing anything. I hate work gloves. I hate them. I would rather work in my bare hands all the time. And when I go back to wardrobe, I'll probably have to wear gloves, and I will be wearing a mask, definitely. And for certain spitty talking actors, I will probably have to wear a face shield at some points too. I mean, and I always carried hand sanitizer on me. Now I'm probably going to carry a vat of it on at all times. Maybe take a bath in it afterwards. I don't know. But backstage quarters, you know, there are a lot of us, you know, the props people are always, you know, they have their locations. They are the carpenters moving the sets, some backstage electricians, everybody. We are all on top of each other, even in theaters. Like my favorite theater to work in, like Donnie mentioned before, is the Waterbury Palace. That's my favorite theater to work in. But once all of like the Broadway sets are in there, it is tiny and it is very tight, and everyone is on top of each other. And I think safety precautions are going to be just as amplified as they are now for us backstage. And I personally would like them to stay that way, just to stay in the clear. You know, I would hate to see reduced crews, because shows try to keep as low a number as possible with lots of things to do. But at the same time, they might still have to reduce, and then there will be more for everybody to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
but-
it seems to me, you know, the rules in Connecticut for indoor performances, they were relaxed a little a couple of weeks back. I suspect they'll be tightened up again now that things are rising. But they really focused on the difference between front of house and on stage and behind the scenes. And the guidelines as they were really, you know, any actors on stage, you've got to be masked. No singing performances. Nothing really explicit about that situation that you describe, where, you know, even in a theatre like the Sherman Playhouse, you know, we tend not to have enormous casts in things, but our dressing rooms are quite tiny, and you do get quite a fug of personal odors in there, and how sweaty it becomes, and battling past people. So I can imagine expanding that to a professional production with everything going on is very difficult to manage in any kind of a socially distanced way. Do you think there's any way that could possibly be done, just from a practical point of view?
Not for dressing actors. I don't see it being possible unless they're all somehow dressing themselves, and then the only purpose for us is to pick up after them and to hang up their clothes after them if they're just dressing themselves. That's the only way I could see it being possible. I mean, I haven't thought too in depth about that part of it, because I'm like, there are quick changes that it's inevitable. You need to have two dressers to help one actor get in and out of a costume in 5 seconds sometimes. I mean, it's unbelievable how quick some of these turnarounds are. No,
I mean, I've seen I've been part of some of those situations where a change is so quick. So no, you absolutely need people right up there, close to you. Again, looking to Kim and Simon and Andrew. Do you think you're going to get back to anything like the way the world was before? I don't necessarily mean, you know, is it going to happen in 6 months or is it going to happen in a year? I just, do you think the world will look the same for you going back into your part of the industry?
I mean, I'll start off and I'll be a little bit optimistic. I think there will be eventually a vaccine. I think there will be eventually issues and ways to treat people who do get this. And I think eventually it will become not terribly much different than the flu. It's a question of how much time that's going to take and what institutions and humans will still be standing when that happens. The way it's affected me personally, I'm probably the oldest one in the room. I'm going to be 68 at the end of this month. I originally intended to take Social Security at 70. I'm going to take it at 68. And for quite a while now, I've been mostly just working in venues and with people that I like to work with. So to some degree, that's not going to change. I just hope it comes back soon enough that I can continue to work with those folks and in those situations that I like.
I hope it does too. And yeah, I think if you're in a position where your skills can't be used, I think that's an incredible waste. You know, as you know, if you're sort of moving away from the world of working every day to the world of working when you choose, that really is a shame that if you wouldn't be able to do that and still be able to pass your skills on to others.
Well, I think everybody here probably hates not working. I mean, you know, we do it mostly because we love it and we like to make money too.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. You know, Simon and I talk every day. We're we're baking sourdough bread. How's your bread doing? What's going on? So crazy. So, you know, it's kind of a silly thing, but it's something to learn and something to pass the time and something new and something interesting. And I'm sure other things will become interesting as well. But again, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that by the end of next year, things won't be normal, but I think things might be close to normal.
I think things are going to be so normal once the vaccine pops up. People are going to take it and they're going to get back on planes and they're going to start going and they're going to forget all about it because people's memories are short. They want to get back to it. I think we're going to have to wear masks for a long time, but at least in my industry, I think they want to get back to it as soon as possible. I know I do.
And
Yeah.
do you think they'll go back to the large scale sort of rock concert type
Yes.
corporate?
Yeah.
You think that there's a desire for that?
Yeah, there's a desire for that, and financially, we have to do it. I mean, I read somewhere. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but like Broadway, for example, the article stated that the 35 Broadway theaters, when you account for the ticketing, the merchandise, the hotel rooms, the parking, the dinners, and the air flights, and all the peripheral economy traits that it brings, accounts for more income to New York City than all of New York and New Jersey sports put together. And that was a pretty amazing statement. So it's got to come back. It has to come back. And I think once, I mean, it came back after the Spanish flu. They forgot all about it 5 years later. You know, I think we're going to be a little smarter. I think we're going to travel with masks. I think we're going to, you know, curb eating habits in public. Maybe I think the restaurant business is going to be the hardest hit out of all of us. Once we get back to being who we are, I think the restaurant business is going to suffer the longest. And you know, those kinds of businesses. But I think we have short memories. I think once the economy is flowing and the death tolls are down, I think we're going to be back to normal, and until something else pops up.
Well, there's certainly, again, there'll certainly be the desire to go back, and again, whether or not that normal is as it is today, or whether tastes may have moved on,
Right.
Is I think a question which is quite open.
Well, I think as Jamie said, it'll be a hybrid of different.
Yes, and Simon, your side of the world. Do you? I think you said you did some work in Vegas.
I've tried to be as diverse as I can, but you know, Broadway is sort of a all-consuming. I applaud Jamie for his future efforts to sort of limit his, you know, work exposure. That I've unfortunately, I mean, I wish him the best luck. What ends up happening, and you know, this doesn't speak to the new, you know, what new normal will be, but when they call, you have to say yes. There is no saying no. The only reason you can possibly ever say no, I can't be there, is because you're actually somewhere else. And I found that doesn't actually even always matter for me. They'll still say, no, well, we still want you to do it, but I have to miss it's fine. We just, you know, we need you to be there when we need you, and we'll work around your schedule, which is a fantastic position to have been in. Very lucky.
We have a lot in common.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way, but, and I agree. I think that I sort of share Kim and Andy's sort of sentiments together in many ways. I do think, you know, theater will be back. It's funny to sort of think of like outdoor theater as being the new thing, which obviously indoor theater is really the new thing, historically speaking, you know, as we look at it. But I think that we'll be back. You know, Broadway's finances are largely tied to tourists, largely tourists from foreign countries coming to New York. So I think that the finances of it are going to be harder to work through. Knowing numbers of producers and general managers, everyone is very committed to getting people back, on stage and in the buildings as soon as possible. We have, it's a little bit of a liability in New York because the theaters are historic. They have very small lobbies. Some don't have lobbies. They just have doors to the outside. If we were at, say, the Buell in Denver, you could socially distance 2 audiences of the Buell in the lobby, staging them to come in. I can't, the only theater in New York that really had 2 theaters maybe would be the Gershwin and the Marquee, who have, the opportunity to have lobbies of that size. But I don't think that anything, at least from our perspective, I think that people who lived through the Spanish flu and sort of rebuilt their former lives to what they are, probably remember the situation differently than we can see it historically. So I think that I know the industry will be back. It's not a question of, I think of all industries, I actually think movie theaters are probably in the hardest shape right now. Experiences that you can nearly replicate at home, I think that their business models are going to dramatically change to, I know there's some movie chains that are doing sort of small rentals. I think that we may see that people wanting a better experience than they can have at home, but aren't interested in sitting with a group of people to watch a new movie. I think that, but theater is about a shared experience, and I don't think that that's going to go away. So I would say that I'm banking on it coming back. I haven't formulated a really good pivot yet. I've been lucky to have a few gigs here and there, but I think that people will come back. People are yearning for things to do, things to connect with other people. From a personal level, it's like I try to not go out very often, but it is a relief to go to the store and have that small sort of slice of normalcy. And that's just a small thing. I think that people who attend theater, the second, the first 2 months when they open it up will just be packed. It's a question of, can we sustain a business model after that? I think because once you open the floodgates, it's just a question of, is there a whole river behind it, or is there enough?
Is it just a quick flood? Yeah. And the point you make about the economy of Broadway being based on tourists is another interesting point that I don't think we've really considered. That you could open Broadway, but you need the audience, and that audience isn't necessarily going to be sustained from locals.
Yeah, I think that, we have without getting political, I don't think we've really assessed the economic impact on a whole scale. The question is, will there be people who can afford to come back and see a Broadway show specifically? It is an investment to go see a Broadway show. You could easily say that for a family of 4 that you were going to around Christmas of 2019, you would probably be spending $1,200 to $1,500 to go see, between tickets and meals and parking or a hotel. And, it does bring a huge revenue into New York City. And, I hope that people will have that kind of, disposable income to bring their families back to see theater. I think that we'll see, my personal prediction is that I think we'll see a season or 2 of, one-man Shakespeare plays, probably. We're going to have to keep the running cost per week down. And I think there'll be some mega musicals, Michael Jackson being an example that are still planning on coming in. But I think their new investments in shows may look differently for a little while. But theater is going to come back. It's not a question of if, it's just when. And if there's so many other, I know many people who have sort of gone and taken refuge out of the city at their parents' house or friends' houses and given up their apartments. So I think it'll be an interesting thing to see who is ready, willing, and able to work again, whether it's on stage or off stage, who can take that risk, who will still be with us to do those jobs.
Simon, you and I have talked about this, and I kind of hate to say it as a tech guy, but I do sort of wonder if, theaters opening up at half capacity or whatever, if that drives a reduction in the production costs that might lead less towards spectacle and perhaps more towards quality content. I don't know, but I think it'd be interesting to see.
I guess it's a, you know, well, boy, it's a question of like, what is quality content, right? I mean,
Yeah, I know.
Question. I think that
Cleverness, perhaps. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I think, boy, if I had a crystal ball, it'd be great. But I think, I do think that we'll see smaller productions. I think that there may be more productions that are focused on music. We did a series called In Residence last summer, where people came in, Morrissey, other, you know, people had come in and done a couple of weeks in a theater. I think you may see a bit more of that. Things that are less risky ventures where you could say, you know, obviously I didn't do Springsteen on Broadway, but the Springsteen on Broadway is a good example of something that was high quality artistic content that easily drew people in and could possibly be profitable at a reduced, you know, audience size. It's when you get into shows that have large casts, you know, lots of automation and lighting and sound and video and high weekly costs, that you need to fill the seats, and those tickets have to be sold at a fairly, you know, high dollar rate.
Yeah.
I have a really important question for Simon.
Okay, Robin.
Did Morrissey show up?
I wasn't there. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I wasn't there for that, but
I knew Robin would perk up at the name Morrissey. You know, I think you know, no disrespect to Stacey, but if Morrissey had turned up and proposed to Robin first, she wouldn't have got a look in.
But he would have had to show up.
He would have had to have shown up. Yes. This is great because we're hearing again so many different perspectives, and we're hearing about so many different impacts of COVID. The notion that what theatre might look like when it comes back isn't just down to demand. It isn't just down to it isn't just down to safety. It may well be down to the type of creativity that's been going on during this downtime as well. What's being written, what's ready to pop, and then, as you say, the pure economics of being able to sustain something beyond that flood of people coming in through the door when you know, when the lights go back on. Certainly on a smaller scale, but certainly with the same concerns. At the Playhouse, when we're considering our next season, we got one weekend into our 2020 season and had to shut down. That meant we'd spent our money on advertising for the start of the season. We'd built a fantastic set. You know, that's all goodbye, that's gone. You know, no, we're not seeing that money again. So got to find that money. Got to think for the next season. Okay, we can't do that again. So how are we going to structure our season? How are we going to publicize it? How are we going to decide which shows we're going to do? That then brings us on to that notion of, well, if we're still shut down, we're a small house. Even if we go with the, you know, with the most generous of conditions at the moment, where we can have 50% in the house, we've still got to have 50% in the house who are socially distanced, which means we get about 34 in an audience. Okay, there's only so much one-man Shakespeare that that you can really do and actually make any money out of it. So then we have to think about, okay, maybe we can do a regular season, but do it outdoors. If we do it outdoors, what's that venue going to be? How are we going to structure that season? And you know, what's that going to look like? So there's a lot of those considerations, even on a sort of a very local scale, which I think are comparable and are informed by you know, by the perspectives that you guys are bringing today. I mean, I'm ferreting all this away in the back of my mind as far as how to move forward. And when I call on you know, people like Crispy or people like Amy to come and help put on a show, you know, those are the kinds of things I'm going to need to be thinking of. Will I need to be talking to Donnie and Jamie about you know, how are we actually going to do this without blowing everybody up, and still being able to show it to enough people that that we can put on a quality show. Yeah, I'm all for a quality show. You know, we could go on Zoom every week and do a bunch of talking heads, but it it would give people something to watch, but it wouldn't necessarily be a quality show. So, you know, I'm absolutely fascinated by these perspectives. So, Robin, any final comments before we round the session up?
No, it's been a great session, and it's incredibly informative. I would say that this is informative to anybody who may hate the performing arts or may not even be interested. This is really, really meaty stuff, and I really appreciate everybody's input on it. In the next few months, we're going to have a lot more of professional performers that are signing on, which is wonderful. And you know, I think after this season, you know, after we finish this, if we ever do, this
Yes.
we keep the ghost light on, that we will really have a comprehensive look at how COVID has affected all of this. So thank you, everybody, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
I must say, good, you know, everybody hang in there, because it's, you know, some of us are fortunate to be working now, but it's a roller coaster. I see myself doing nothing this winter, and I see, you know, me and Crispy were at that church. I feel a lot of church work is going to keep a lot of Broadway people busy. I mean, that event that me and Crispy did at the cathedral in Hartford was by far one of the larger scale, elaborate productions that I've seen in 6 months. Probably pre-COVID times, what we saw at that church in Hartford was on a Super Bowl level for Roman Catholic. It was an enormous production.
Oh, I mean, it was a huge event too. Yeah.
Huge. But I think we're going to keep seeing those events, especially in House of Worship. And I think it's going to keep theater people busy, even though we don't want to do church stuff, but it is what it is. You got to do anything, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure people would light anything, sound anything at this point, you know? So.
Well, we are coming up to the holiday season. We're coming up to a season where people want to be together and want to be entertained, or even want to get out away from each other from time to time. And I do wonder, again, coming back to Jamie's comments on those experience productions, whether we'll see a few more of those kind of things popping up, where otherwise, you know, where otherwise we just wouldn't see them. So that might be a thing to watch out for. As Robin says, this has been a fantastic show. I'm really pleased that we went ahead and pulled together a tech special. I knew it would be interesting. I knew it would be a whole different perspective from maybe the performance side of things. And so it's proved to be. I'm still, as always, very impressed with how pragmatic and optimistic people in the performing arts are, as well as how supportive of each other they are. And I think that's one comment I would say. I would say to everyone on who's been a guest tonight, and everyone who's watching either live or watching this as a recording later, the creative community is overwhelmingly supportive to each other. They overwhelmingly want the colleagues and friends and fellows in the performing arts to succeed. So again, you know, if you find yourself in a position where you are struggling, reach out, talk to your friends, talk to people in the industry. They may not have a job for you, but I'm sure they'll listen and give you some hope. And as we hear, there is hope. There is hope. Even this bunch of grizzled, old, cynical techies have hope, and that's if that can happen, then there are miracles after all. So thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with a regular show with just a few people to talk to, but we'll definitely do this kind of thing again, where we'll focus on a particular part of the industry. So thank you so much to everybody who's taken part in the call, in the show. Really appreciate it, and thank you to everybody who's watched on Facebook and everybody who will watch. And we'll see you again. And the only thing that's left for me to say is good night to my guests. Good night, everybody.
And tomorrow, please vote.
That's
Yes,
that's
Please
a good
vote.
point. I was about to say that, and I forgot. So thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of an important day tomorrow, with everything else going on. No matter who you're voting for, vote. I said this last week. It is it's a right and a privilege and a duty to vote. Make every effort to get out there and vote. Be safe, but do what you need to do to support your point of view, and above all, vote with your heart and vote with your conscience. So thank you very much, everybody. And all that remains is for Robin to say good night. Say good night, Robin.
Say good night, Robin.
There you go. He got it wrong again. He's got one line in the whole thing, and he, oh dear.
Never watched Laughing.
Oh dear. Oh, there we
I'm
go.
laughing. Oh yeah.
Maybe I'll edit that bit out. But
All right,
thank you very much, everybody, and have a good week, and keep safe. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you. Bye bye now.